On the front page of the Sun was this word that I'd never seen before. It was called moratorium. And I saw all these students, these bloody uni students in the middle of Burke Street carrying placards and that, calling us baby killers and so on and so forth. And that went through the ship within 15 minutes.
Welcome to the podcast where we track down Australian war veterans, have a chat with them, and hear their stories. I'm Alex Lloyd, and this is Life on the Line.
Adversity has an effect of bonding people together. Tested our mettle as a team.
They held that man virtually prisoner. Terrible, terrible injustice.
Submarine alert, surface alert.
Riding out a Typhoon in a 4,500-tonne destroyer.
Make decisions.
We really feared for our life.
So we got back and we did a march, and I guess that's the memory you hold was all these people booing and hissing as you went and did the march.
Stations, I went to that turret.
War itself is horrific. It's a horror story and should never be dressed up as if it's something glorious.
Welcome to Life on the Sea, a special spin-off miniseries of Life on the Line podcast. This miniseries profiles 9 veterans of the Royal Australian Navy who served in either the Korean War or the Vietnam War. This is episode 6, Career. This instalment features some of our veterans talking about their life in the Navy after Vietnam, and for some, their life beyond the uniform. Let's start with Douglas Symes Jr. and what he got up to after being at Cerberus with his father.
Posted to HMAS Tarrangou, which was Papua New Guinea. So I went up there for a year, tropical conditions of Papua New Guinea, to Manus Island. And that was a great life up there. That was really good. It was always said that they sent up the people that they wanted to get rid of or weren't any good or, but I didn't find that. I found that it was, they were a good mob of blokes and it was a great place to be in. It was a tropical island, for goodness sake. The only thing that was a bit hard was the heat. We didn't have air conditioning in those days. The only place that was air conditioned, I think, was a communication centre. But, there was plenty of social life up there and all the blokes used to get together at night and sing, and that was something I liked to do, and we used to have a lovely time. There wasn't much conflict within the groups of people. We all lived pretty much in harmony. We were only there for a year. We knew what to expect. You're in there for a year and out again. So I did that, and then when I left there, I was promoted. I went back to Cerberus. Then I was promoted to a petty officer there, and I did my course there, and then I went to HMAS Derwent, which is another river class destroyer escort, the same as a Parramatta, exactly the same virtually. So I was on that one. By coincidence, that was my brother's first ship. My brother joined the Navy after me.
Trevor?
Yeah, Trev, yeah. He joined the Navy after me. He was there as an odd cook. And then after he left the Derwent, he went to the Parramatta.
Oh.
So we had a sort of a...
There's a lot of funny connections and overlap in the Navy.
Oh, yeah, look. It's incredible how it works. And you don't strive for it or anything like that. It's just how life sort of pans out. And so we've got a lot in common, my brother and I. But we always worked close because we were the first two. I was always a big brother to my little brother. I sort of still am, But anyway, I was promoted to PO, went to the Derwent. I was on there for 2 years, came off the Derwent. And just as I was coming off, I met my wife-to-be. Through a chap that was on the ship. He'd paid off, went to live in Queensland. I went up to visit him in Queensland, and this girl lived next door, and the next thing you know, we're getting married. So anyway, I did that, and from there I went to HMAS Albatross, and then I went to HMAS Huon down in Tasmania. And at the end of 1971, I was married. My wife come down to Hobart, and we lived there for a year. I was promoted in the February of 1972 to chief, and Dad was still in the Navy at the time. And we were the first father and son chief petty officers in the Royal Australian Navy, serving at the same time. So I flew over to Melbourne, and we got some photos taken, and there was a bit of a publicity thing about it, recruiting and stuff. And I went back down there and spent a year down there, and subsequently got posted back to Manus Island, where I was as a young bloke. So I was there as a young bloke, as a Calac, and then I went back up there as a chief. I was actually in charge of the victualling up there then, and that's where our son was born. We stayed there for 2 years, 2 very good years of our life. Came back to Australia and I was posted to Cutterville. Then I went to HMAS Stalwart. I was on Stalwart for a year. That was good because it went up to New Guinea to do I was there with their independent, and then they got their self-government in 75. I went up for that. So, I've got a certain affiliation with Papua New Guinea. One of Dad's uncles, he was a Symes. He was a deputy health inspector or whatever it was in New Guinea for some time. People from my other side, my mother's side, they lived up in New Guinea for some time. So New Guinea, flows through our system. And when we come back from there, I was posted to Penguin.
The naval base?
Yeah, the naval base in Penguin. And that's where our daughter was born, in Manly. And from there, I posted back to Cerberus, spent 4 years there. And then I subsequently paid off after 20 years.
Not long after his father-in-law's passing, David Dwyer's wife fell pregnant. The due date was dangerously close to David's discharge date. This presented David with a conundrum.
My wife became pregnant when I was ashore. The baby was due in November 1972, which was close to my discharge date. I wanted to stay in the Navy because been there since I was 17 and I really liked my service. I liked the Navy. I liked the camaraderie. I liked everything about it. And I came out on a posting note to go to HMAS Melbourne.
The flagship.
Carrier. Yeah, the flagship, which was going up north in November. I spoke to my wife and said, well, I'm not going to be home when the baby's born. What do you want me to do? I'll do what you want. She said, no, I need you at home. So the Cato he said, well, you'll be made PO while you're at sea. Think about it. So I'd done the advanced cooking course at Cerberus. Everything was in place to be made, that extra rank. But I decided I would take a discharge. DEE, they call it discharge enlistment ended. But I knew I couldn't break like that. I had withdrawal symptoms. So I transferred to the Royal Australian Navy Reserve and I was discharged on the 24th of November 1972, joined the reserve on the 25th, and my son was born on the 26th. Always know his birth date. In that period from 1972 to 1997, I picked my petty officers up in the reserves and I came back to Cerberus.
Again?
Yeah, just to do, I think it was 3 months. I'd come back previous to that as a leading hand for a couple of weeks. Reserve service was every Tuesday night down at HMAS Lonsdale in Port Melbourne, with regular periods at sea for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on the ship you went. I did a lot of time in patrol boats, which I absolutely adored. They were great. My wife, by this time, we'd moved from our Navy house into a house that was quite close to her family and mine, so I didn't feel too bad. The baby was good. I felt comfortable to go to sea. My wife was well serviced by family and friends, so did a lot of work up in out of Cairns, Darwin, and during the time of the boat people from Vietnam. If a boat was discovered with refugees, we'd tow them into Darwin. Also at Cerberus, I did instruction period there in the catering school. This is a condensed version of over 20 years. I went to a couple of Type 12s as the PO cook for brief periods of time, and GPVs, general purpose vessels, served in them. And then the new Fremantle class patrol boat, I served in that as a PO because I didn't have any cooks, the reserve cooks that could go there. I didn't mind that. I slept with the ship's company, but I didn't particularly worry. In that period of time too, I worked in oil rigs, and they released you for your service in the fleet. Under the Act, they had to, and didn't affect my seniority. I worked in a myriad of jobs as a chef, in clubs, in mines, in construction barges, in a telephone cable barge, laying cable out of Geraldton. All this time I'm away from the wife, and we'd had another child by then. But my wife's pretty strong and she could handle it, the separation. Indisposed with trips to sea in the reserves or down at Cerberus. After 20 years, I got made Chief Petty Officer, and I would go down to Cerberus, and the catering officer that was there was one of my young AB cooks when I was a leader, and as things would have it, his father was my first chief cook in Vendetta in 1964. So it all strung together, and I remained friends with him right through until he passed away. I had my own company for a while, catering company, but every cook's best friend, osteo and arthritis, got me, and I had to give it up. And in 2000, I went and worked in the county court in Melbourne as a tipstaff to a judge, which is each judge had a tipstaff and an associate. I had a female judge, first female boss I'd ever worked for. She was a jewel, and I was a good manager of time. That's why she liked me. A judge has to have her time managed. And along with the associates, there were 4 in the period I was with her for 7 years. They were all great. I also became the secretary of the Tipstaff Social Club, and also I did a lot of functions for judges. If a judge would retire, they'd have a farewell, and I would do the catering for that. And the tipstaffs, I had a happy hour every payday, which was every 2 weeks. The tipstaffs, there were 64 of them, 60 were ex-service, so they all understood what it was all about, happy hour. It was just to spread camaraderie, and we all, no matter what service we're in, we had the similar stories, and I liked it. I liked very much being in the county court. Prior to my discharge from the Navy, I joined this association, the HMAS Sydney VLSVA, as secretary. I was the inaugural secretary. I did it for a couple of years, had a break for 18 months and went back, and I've been doing it as secretary or a member of the committee for the past 30 years.
Jim Dixon was fleet navigator on the Melbourne until mid-1972, then XO of the Naval College in Jervis Bay. Jim deeply loved training people. He had some interesting highlights from his time in the college.
Prince Philip came down to the Naval College when we were there, and I engineered that in a way which hadn't pleased their lordships in Canberra very much, but his equerry had been a shipmate of mine in Tartar, and I'd written to his equerry and said that on the forthcoming royal visit could HRH, spare the time to come and see the Naval College at Jervis Bay, and he wrote back and said, "Yeah, delighted, love to, And I said, well, you better get him to put it in the itinerary. And he said, no, it's all got to come from your end. Well, then we had to tell the powers in Canberra that Prince Philip wanted to come, and they were not pleased. But anyway, from the Creswell, I went to command HMAS Yarra, one of the River-class frigates, and that was a fairly uneventful time in lots of ways. A good command to get, bigger than the Minesweeper I'd had, but and it was a command, and 18 months there was...
You're well into the long peace by now, though, so there's... the Navy's doing things, but there's less happening.
And I wasn't with the fleet much of the time at all because we were doing trials on a bit of a sonar equipment. And there's nothing more boring than trials, week after week, with scientists dictating where the ship will go and what it'll do. So although it was peaceful enough, it wasn't operationally satisfying, and the greatest fun we had there in the Yarra was going to pick up Sir John Kerr, the Governor-General in 1977. It was in 1976 that he went up to, having dismissed the Whitlam government in 75, he tried to get away for a break up at Hamilton Island. I was operating off the east coast of Australia and got a secret signal saying, go and pick up the Governor-General at Hamilton Island, take him to Mackay. That was a wonderful experience because we had an American midshipman on board, or an ensign, and there was a bit of excitement for the ship's company and so on.
You saved the Governor-General.
He was a fascinating man. After Yarra, command of Yarra, I was sent to America, to the United States Naval War College at Newport, Rhode Island, for a 1-year course up there.
That's quite prestigious to get into. They
only one from
only one each country each year.
Yeah, I was lucky to be there. And I'd done the Royal Navy Staff course and then thought myself very lucky to get the US Naval War College one as well, which was a marvellous experience. I'd seen the US Navy operating at sea, been part of it in Vietnam and so on. Get the experience of seeing them ashore, and this course had privileged access to this, that and the other thing. We were flown all over the country and shown America, and it was a real mind-broadening thing, which gave me contacts galore with people around, in navies all around the world.
You're interacting with prestigious, successful fellow naval officers such as yourself from up to 40, 50 other countries?
Well, there were 32 on the course.
I think it's a bit larger.
Maybe a bit bigger, yeah. Marvellous exposure and a great experience. And then, having done that, I came home and went to Canberra, second half of 1977, went to Canberra in command of the Naval Tactical Data Centre at Fishwick, the software support centre, which was supporting the computerised operational system in the DDGs, the guided missile destroyers. It wasn't a job I enjoyed. It was my first Canberra appointment. I had been regarded with envy by most of my contemporaries because I had avoided Canberra and I'd had all the good jobs at sea and goodness knows what, and 3 commands, or 2 commands at that stage. And I thought I was pretty privileged to do that. But Canberra was an eye-opener. I should have gone there a lot earlier because it's a different world. Arriving there with 4 stripes on my arm as a 4-stripe captain, I hardly knew what a FAS or First Assistant Secretary was from a DepSec and I didn't know all the ins and outs of the bureaucracy and how to operate, which you needed to learn further down the line. And it was not an enjoyable time for me, particularly that 77 to 80.
Like Mark Kinder, John Lord was on the Brisbane for its final deployment to Vietnam. After the Brisbane returned to Australia, John found himself a new posting. What came after the patrol boat?
Well, I did my 12, I suppose, months there, came back to Australia and joined HMAS Vendetta down here in Melbourne. I think it was coming out of refit. I was going to be just the communications officer, but then got grabbed to go up and be the aide-de-camp to the Chief of Navy in Canberra, which was something you're never trained for. All you want to do is stay at sea, of course, at that stage. It was still exciting and you're doing things. So I was grabbed and sent up to Canberra for 18 months as the aide-de-camp to the Chief of Navy, which...
That's another world.
In hindsight, it was a completely different world. Hindsight was a very, very rewarding job. I was there during the selection of the whole new destroyer project where we bought Perth, Hobart and Brisbane. The first time we'd ever bought United States Navy ships instead of British ships. Huge decision. And I was in the Chief of Navy's office while those types of deliberations went on. So it was pretty exciting.
So where did you go after the aide-de-camp position?
Right, aide-de-camp. I then went back to Vendetta, but as a navigating officer, which is what I'd always wanted to be ever since those days in Vietnam when I was the assistant bombardment navigating officer and plotting where the shells were. That had convinced me to be a navigator. So I went back to HMAS Vendetta as the navigating officer, which was great. As not a fully qualified navigator officer, so you had to go to UK to do that, which I did subsequently. But went back to do my first navigation job, which was good. At that time, the first Timor event happened, so we were up in Darwin standing by to go into Timor if required. So that was fairly exciting. Cyclone Tracy occurred, so we were part of the RAN contingent that sailed up and arrived in Darwin, about 6 days after the cyclone went through and did the clear up. So all those things happened. So yeah, at that stage, it was about 24 years of age. It was still a very exciting time in the Navy.
Can you tell me about Tracy?
I was duty on Christmas Day there in Sydney. We had bits of our ship all over the wharf being repaired because you always did work over Christmas. And Tracy occurred. The Navy was told it would sail. We recalled everyone back to the ship and we got more sailors back than we ever sent on leave. And that was because all those in shore establishments or not on warships time volunteered to go. It was a huge effort. 24 hours after being told to go, we sailed with HMAS Melbourne for Darwin, which was just a great effort to have nearly the whole Navy at sea within 24 hours. It was just fantastic. Airlines flew sailors back for free from all over Australia just to get them back. And we all equipped, stored, and off we went. It took us 6 days to get there. I think it was 6 or 7 days. And when we arrived there, they'd got most of the women and children out, I think, and most of the people there were those that were staying, and mainly blokes watching TV because they weren't working too hard. Then we came along and did the work. It was a real eye-opener. It was a great effort, great spirit amongst us Defence Force personnel in helping the people of Darwin. I mean, I have one memory there of going into the Woolworths store, food store out at further out in Darwin, just forget the suburb at the moment. This was 2 weeks after the cyclone, and we went in there in protective suits and the whole store was moving. And the reason it was moving was all these things were in the food. You can imagine what it was like. It was just awful. We could stand it about half an hour and go out, throw up, and then go back in as we cleared it out. It was just revolting. But yeah, that was an eye-opener.
So it's 1974. You've been in the Navy 9 years and seen quite a lot at this point. At this point, do you reflect on your career and go, this has been huge, action-packed, have you had enough, or you just set your sights on want to keep going? What are your goals?
It's a good question, and one now you talk about when you talk to young people, and over my career, and particularly now in the commercial world, I talk to a lot of people in different contexts. When you joined a job back when you're 15 or 18 or 20, in my era, it was a lifetime job. So if you went to the PMG Telstra, you were going to be a Telstra for life. So when I took on Navy, even though I knew nothing about it, never been in the boat, It was for life. I never thought about doing anything else. It was always the Navy. So you just kind of said, right. And you move in Navy, like in Army and Air Force, every 2 or 3 years. You'd say, I've been in Vendetta 18 months. They must be thinking about where they're going to send me next. I wonder what it is, and you might try and hint that you want to the captain, you want to go somewhere or do something different or want to go to another part. But it was always Navy focused. And I guess I never had any thought of leaving the Navy at that time at all.
Whereas these days where careers are so all over the place, that's just quite a different mentality.
Yeah, it is. I guess I went through a stage when I was about 40 that I might want to get out of the Navy, but only because a friend of mine was in the commercial world making a hell of a lot more money, and that seemed very exciting. And then, of course, at the age of 50, I left prematurely a little bit too. I could have stayed on for a few more years. So they're about the only 2 times that I've done it. But bear in mind, Navy did shift me around every 2 to 3 years, so I was changing jobs anyway. I mean, going to completely different jobs. We talked about just earlier, I was about to be communications officer of Vendetta, and then all of a sudden I became the aide-de-camp to the Chief of Navy in Canberra, completely different.
Same, different jobs, some are promotions, some
Same
are sideway
company,
movements. It's the same company, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're just taking different positions within the company.
Yeah.
After a deployment to Southeast Asia, John was sent to the UK for warfare and navigation training in 1975. Then something unexpected happened next. So where do you find yourself after your honeymoon?
Honeymoon, I come back to Australia and I go to sea. And I leave my wife. She has to go and find jobs in Sydney, not knowing anyone in Australia. But that's the life life of a naval wife, as they say. So I joined HMAS Hobart as the navigating officer, and I stayed there for the next 3 odd years as the navigating officer, which was a great period. A bit of a forerunner, because then I went back and captained Hobart subsequently. So I knew the ship pretty well by the time I became captain, after 3 years as navigator. So I did that for 3 years. What did we do? We went to Hawaii doing major exercises called Rim of the Pacific, with the US Navy, Koreans, Japanese. All of us get together once every 2 years in Hawaii, did a couple of those deployments. Several deployments just out into then the South Pacific. Standard peacetime naval operations, really. Yeah, so it was peacetime, and you did lots of things like go around Australia, cocktail parties, take people to sea, major exercises off the coast, exercises with the Americans off Queensland, all these, over to New Zealand for major exercises. It was that type of period of peacetime naval operations, which in their own way were very exciting, but you got into a routine and you knew what was happening. So Hobart had a 4-strike captain in command. Philip Kennedy was the first one, who went on to become an admiral, and the second captain was Tony Horton, who went on to become an admiral and became a very close personal friend and still is today. We had having a 4-strike captain meant you were a task group leader. So the added challenge for the navigating officer on board was you also helped the captain run a group of ships. So we would be in charge of 20 ships at a time, or 10 ships, or 4 ships as a task group. So that was just added excitement, I think, or added challenge to the job.
I also asked John about the 1987 Welcome Home March, and we talked further on the war's controversy. When the Welcome Home March comes around, does that sort of, I know for many Vietnam veterans who retired after Vietnam, or Vietnam was the extent of their service, that was a sort of very long overdue form of closure. How was that for you?
No, it wasn't. I was well and truly over it by then. I think because I stayed in the military, you move on. And it'd be fair to say that stayed with me 5 years, perhaps 10 years, a little bit of resentment. But that was it. By then I'd moved on. I'd rescued people. I'd done cyclone relief. When I was captain of Adelaide, I was I was the last Australian Navy ship alongside in Fiji for the first Fiji coup, evacuating Australians. So you just moved on, and
you're busy. You're getting on with your.
You're getting on with your job, and I guess also in the uniform in the military, I started to have far more interactions with the Australian population, and they weren't like they were back then. So they'd moved on. And it was easy for me to see that. Perhaps those Vietnam veterans who went out into civilian life, got on with their jobs and raised kids and had to do all that, didn't have time to stop and take stock of that because they weren't wearing the uniform every day, so therefore the uniform hadn't become part of Australian society and accepted, which I'd been able to see a lot earlier.
After Vietnam, a few of the veterans featured in this series felt the pull to leave the service and try something new. Willie Beattie had a great time in Hawaii with Derwent and heading all around the Far East. But after that, he did not hang around too long. And where were you posted next?
I left to do it, and I went ashore for 2 months, and I paid off. That was it. They asked me to rejoin, and I was married in, and I'd lost my dad when I was on the Derwent, and they wouldn't give me leave. I sort of got a bit upset with that. And then my wife had a miscarriage, and they wouldn't give me leave again, and I got a bit upset with that. And after that, I sort of said, well, It's just not for me, so I got out after that.
Mistreatment by the Navy, mistreated for being in the Navy by the public. These things all kind of coalesced and...
Yeah. Well, when my dad, we did a refit at Williamstown and we were leaving, and I went and seen the engineer and I said, I have got to have a leave because my dad's got cancer. He's in hospital. And he said, the priest round, he said, the last rites. And he said to me, you can't have leave till he dies. And we sailed 4 o'clock and he died at 8 o'clock that night. So... And I had to wait 2 days to get to Jarvis Bay before they let me go ashore. So, and I had to hitchhike home, which I wasn't impressed with. So, it sort of put a bit of a dark spot on it for me.
I can imagine.
At the time of my career, yeah.
It's terrible.
Then my wife had a miscarriage, and once again, no, you can't leave. I thought, well, another dark spot. So after that, they asked me to sign it. I goes, no, I'm done now, thank you. I got out after that. So, I've got 3 kids now, so we're beautiful.
What did you go on to do after the Navy?
Well, I wanted to go in the fire brigade, and I went to Melbourne City, to see the specialist doctor regarding my medical. I was fully cleared medical at Navy, and I went and see him. I sat there from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and he said to me, no, he's too busy, you have to come back tomorrow. So I got another day off service next day, come back the next day. He said, no, he's too busy, you have to come back tomorrow. So I got another day and come back. He said, no, he's too busy, you have to come back tomorrow. And I was talking to my elder brother who was a builder, and he said, stuff had come with me. So I went and did building. After that, become a builder. I went to night school, become a builder, and was a builder ever since. Did it all my own way, and loved it. Loved being a builder. And I've got a couple of Navy mates. I give them a week's work when they're getting out of the Navy to rehabilitate them. Quite a few of them actually come and give me work for me for a week as they're getting out of the Navy. So give them a bit of civilian training and things. Half of them work and half of them would bugger off for the week anyway, so, you know. But no, it was good. No, thoroughly enjoyed it.
What have you observed of skills transference? Because I often hear that the naval qualifications or defence qualifications in general are under-recognised in the civilian world because, for example, with the Navy, if you're trained in any particular specialty, you can't just specialise to the nth degree. You have to be able to apply those skills across a much wider range of tasks because the ship has to depend on you to deal with any particular problem.
That's right,
That jack of all trades is actually quite valuable in that context, and that's not always recognised in Civvy Street. What have you observed personally or among friends, colleagues with that kind of difficulty transitioning?
Well, yeah, a lot of them found it very hard. I mean, you've got what you call mechanicians, and they don't sort of know what they are. They can become boilermaker watchkeepers. That's a bit the size of it. Whether they're more a mechanic, they've got to get more paid. Electrician, well, like they're only, my friend at the moment is an electrician, and he had a couple of Navy guys working for him. But it's not the same qualification, so they had to go to school to read the new paperwork. So it's really, it doesn't cross over that well. So, but as a builder, it did. I was quite lucky actually. So I just went to night school for a year and got it all. I was lucky because of my brother there, so which is good.
And you invested in yourself, but you still had to do the work of requalifying.
That's right. Yeah. But I'm out of it now. My son's doing it now, so he's taking over my business. So I'm doing a good job too. So it's been a long time. So and you get a good living out of it and hard work. But that's one thing the military teaches, you're never afraid of hard work.
Nothing's as hard as being a stoker in that room.
No, nothing. People don't realise that, as I say, you put your overalls on, and as soon as you hit the bottom plate, you're just sweating. I mean, not just you're full on sweating, you're soaked. So first thing you do is you got to have a shower, you have to. But no, that's why they call it the Black Hole, the Black Gang. That's why we all stole the ice off the cook, so.
You mentioned after you discharged, you stayed away from servicemen and interacting with them so much.
Oh, for quite a long time, quite a few years.
Was that partly because obviously the black marks you held against the Navy, or was it also to do with the Vietnam conflict?
Mainly the Vietnam conflict, what they put us through. I didn't appreciate that. I thought, well, I can't understand we did. We were helping our blokes, and to be treated like that, even them blokes to be treated like that, I thought was just, it's totally un-Australian. But the way they just, to shit thrown at you, bottles of blood and pissed on, and it's not a good feeling, and you can't do nothing. I just sort of said, back at this, I've got nothing to do with it anymore, so I give it away. But a couple of blokes I joined up with, Dennis and Mick, said it's not about you, get your medal, it's not about you, it's about your kids. So I thought it was, okay, so I sent away and got my medals, and lo and behold, I had a few of them, and we started doing Anzac Day. We've been to Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, all meet together Anzac Day every year then we go somewhere every year. There's 8 of us. We're still doing it. So this year we're going back to the Gold Coast. So we're still doing it then. But, they're all getting a bit worried because they're getting a bit older. No, we still meet each other all the time. So which is good. The other blokes I joined up with slept next to the first day. So it's brilliant.
John Carroll also wanted something new. Where were you off to after Sydney?
I came back to Lonsdale, fleet maintenance, and then I decided I would go back into the reserve, 73.
What inspired that?
I wanted to be able to do something else. I wanted to stay on the reserve list, but I fell of the Navy per se. I ended up as a senior shipwright surveyor with the Marine Board of Victoria, remained in the reserve.
As a Chief Petty Officer?
As a Chief Petty Officer. At that time they were calling them Marine Technician Hull. Being a surveyor, I had to be able to be accredited with all the classification societies. I worked for the Department of Defence for 3 years as a technical officer, and then I went into teaching.
What were you teaching?
Originally started off teaching boat building at Berry Street in Footscray, at part of Footscray Tech. I couldn't get a full teaching load for a student teacher, so they farmed me out to secondary. I was teaching woodwork to young people.
Now, John, I introduced you at the start of our conversation as John Carroll, but you are in fact Dr. John Carroll and have multiple doctorates under your belt. Can you talk to me about your various doctorates and thesis writing and what you're doing with yourself today?
I've got 3 PhDs, well, 2 PhDs and an ED. When I was teaching, I decided I would try and get into a university. This came about with, I did a paper on visual perception, and the psychologist that looked at that said, this is great stuff. You could probably get into university. It's of university standard. So I got cheeky once I picked up my diploma and grad dip from Hawthorn Teachers College. I went across to Monash University as a mid-year intake in 1984. I completed my B.Ed in 1986. I did a Master's in Educational Studies. I finished that in 89. And one of my supervisors for that was Professor Murray Bolton. And Murray said, in front of my daughter, he said, I think you do a damn good PhD. I had a lot of time for Murray. He was an Adlerian psychologist, the psychology of Alfred Adler. First, I gave it a bit of thought and I thought, well, heck, why not? So I completed my first doctorate in 1993. It was examined in the United States and it came back without any recommendations for alterations or additions.
Fantastic.
Completely. The dean gave me a gold star and a tick in the box, and I graduated in 1993 with my first doctorate. In the year 2000, I was starting to get a bit itchy about doing something else, so I put in to do the professional doctorate in education. I met up with Professor David Harvey, and he agreed to supervise. I wrote a thesis on encouragement, which I thought was an very adequate topic to do it on. I toured around Victorian secondary school, got a fair sample, and developed a frequency of encouragement scale, which is still being used in the United States. Dr. Dan Eckstein and Professor Richard Watts at Sam Houston University use it. Dynamite Dan wrote back and said that it was great stuff. Nobody in Australia wants to touch it. I'm not particularly worried about that. It was published in the Journal of Individual Psychology in 2005. I think they justified by doing that. While I was at Monash, I thought it was too good an opportunity to waste, so I went to the arts faculty and asked one of the historians there whether they would supervise me while I did a PhD in history. And Dr. Jane Drakehard said that she would. In 2013, I picked up my third doctorate in arts history. And the title of that was the Royal Australian Navy in Vietnam.
Fantastic cover shot.
Yeah, that was taken by a leading diver, Tony I.
Out of sight, out of mind, the Royal Australian Navy in Vietnam, 1965 to 1972, John R. Carroll.
And that was the title of the thesis.
After experiencing the Melbourne-Evans collision and time in Vietnam, Mark Kinder also felt it was time to move on. Tell me about when you finally left the Navy and why.
We had a cutback in defence. We had a change of government and we had the opportunity to get out after a certain period of time. And by that time I was feeling very restless. I'd got my life skill, cooking, but I knew that I would never do it outside I wanted to go elsewhere with my life, and I wanted a career outside. So I started studying sales and marketing at the Australian Institute of Management and managed to get some very, very good executive jobs on the way through, and went from strength to strength. I didn't really look back on leaving Navy and transiting into civilian life as any great problem at all. It just was like getting off the train on one platform and crossing over and getting onto another train. I did not have that problem. Maybe it was because I was exposed at 3M Company to a lot of the sales reps in the 3 years prior to joining Navy that might have set me up for that. Also went back and did some more schooling and did a lot more sales and marketing courses as well. I think that was the key to me, being a little bit easier with myself in later years and not being so hard on myself in terms of my military life, because a lot of guys go through a lot of spaces of, like I said, this guilt and hopelessness of things that have happened to them. But I think the engagement of the type of people I had when I got out of Navy helped me with that. But I was always very wary of saying I was a Vietnam veteran, because you could see in their eyes something and jumping back there, the 6 foot from me. So I didn't say too much about Vietnam.
What year was it that you discharged?
74.
You were serving through the height of the anti-Vietnam sentiment, but did that still reach you while you were serving, or did that hit you more afterwards?
Well, that's basically why I said I wouldn't sort of class myself at that stage as being a Vietnam veteran, even though I was aware of the feelings against us.
Were you just aware of it, or were you negatively affected by it, or...?
Well, I'll give you an example. One morning we wake up on board the ship. We've taken in mail. I've got Herald Sun. I've got the Sun in front of me that my mum sent me. So has the other blokes have got their Mercury, who came from Tasmania, and so on and so forth. And on the front page of the Sun was this word that I'd never seen before. It was called moratorium. And I saw all these students, these bloody uni students in the middle of Burke Street carrying placards and that, calling us baby killers and so on and so forth. And that went through the ship within 15 minutes, that feeling, because a lot of the other guys had got those papers as well. And we hadn't had a paper drop for 6 weeks. So all of a sudden, the whole world's turned against us. And the feeling and the morale on the ship dipped significantly within 15 to 20 minutes. It was, well, what are we doing here? How come Australia's turned against us? It was as if we were gobsmacked. We were walking around sort of with distant looks on our face. We got over that pretty quick, and I think that turned into a bit of resentment in terms of the guys on board the ship, from shock and horror and disappointment and disillusionment to a bit of anger.
Commodore Jim Dixon carried on in the Navy for many more years.
I then went in command of the Brisbane, 2 years in command of the Brisbane guided missile destroyer, which the third of, which I loved. We had some fairly exciting deployment, or an exciting deployment up to the Northwest Indian Ocean. There was stuff going on which you may have read about, but long before you were born, that part of the world. The Iranian hostage crisis you may have heard of. That had abated by the time we got up there, but there was still tension in the area. But it meant going up, integrating with the units of the 7th Fleet again, and I felt comfortable doing that. Again, giving another ship's company experience of working with a bigger sort of fleet. And we deployed to Hawaii for RIMPAC exercises in 82. And I came ashore in 82 and I was appointed to go and get HMS Invincible, the carrier, which was to replace the Melbourne. And I was going to fill in Canberra for a few months and then go to UK and pick up the Invincible in command and commission her and bring her out to Australia. And then Malcolm Fraser and Maggie Thatcher decided that the sale wouldn't go through, and my ultimate command sort of disappeared, and I finished up in a paper shuffling job in Canberra for 6 months, which drove me up the wall until I was appointed as Director of Public Information in the Defence Department, which I did for a year and a half in mid-83 to the end of 84.
And what rank are you at this stage?
I was promoted Commodore to go into that. And at the end of 84, I was sent to UK to do the RCDS, the Royal College of Defence Studies. I didn't think I had a hope of doing that because I'd done all these other international courses, but they said, no, go and do that. The most wonderful year of my career. It was a magnificent experience, the RCDS. And I did that in 85. My army contemporary was Michael Jeffrey, later the Governor-General. And there was an Air Force fellow as well. And were lectured by the tops, people at the top, Maggie Thatcher and King Constantine and goodness knows, Caspar Weinberger, the American Secretary of State and so on. And just a wonderful experience the whole year. And this was to prepare one, for higher appointments. because a lot of it was focused on strategy and defence management. And I came home from there, went to the job as Director General Plans and Policy in Navy Office, and was there 86, 87, had been given indications that I was going on to higher things, but then my chief called me in and said he'd decided that he needed to promote somebody not as old as I was, and invited me to go elsewhere. Effectively, I was passed over and put out to grass, and my career, which I'd seen as having a very good future, was effectively terminated at that point. I, in fact, came down and was sent down to Cerberus in command, and there I was in command from the beginning of 88 to the beginning or to the end of 1990, nearly 3 years there. And again, being back among sailors, being in a training establishment, I revelled in it, loved that job and all that went with it, and decided I could have gone back to Canberra, but I could see that I wasn't going to go anywhere, and I decided I'd get out and make my future down here. That's what I've done.
Your final role is in arguably your favourite kind, training and teaching.
Yep.
But after such a long career devoted to the Navy, to just be passed over like that, how'd you feel at the time?
I felt bitter at the time. I still harbour those feelings. I try and suppress them. I'd been highly recommended for promotion from a whole lot of sources. I think I'm not being vain in saying that the Navy expected me to be promoted. I was bitterly disappointed because I had some ideas about where the Navy should go, and I wanted to be part of reshaping the Navy for the 2000s. And I had strong ideas about the closer relationship, cutting down the barrier between the military uniform and the civilian populace, and also about such things as nuclear power. I think, we should have gone that way at that stage. And anyway, it was not to be. You can't argue with when your chief says, that's it, you go. So I've gone, and I have been lucky to enjoy 25 years of retirement down here, picked up the threads and done some interesting things here.
Such as?
Oh, well, Initially I ran a little company trying to digitise the births, marriages and deaths. We were moving into the computer age. I was then appointed to the Police Board of Victoria when the Kennett government came in 1992. Sir John Young, the ex-Chief Justice, was appointed as chairman. Police Commissioner Neil Comrie was the chief cop. And they wanted a military guy, and I was walking the streets, and Jeff Kennett said, like you for that job. And I did that for 7 years. I sat on the Veterans Review Board reviewing the pension entitlements of widows and those who put in claims at the DVA. I needed to top up my pension. And I got very involved with ex-Navy things in the ex-Navy community down here, and legacy and scouts and one or two things in the civilian community. I really effectively stopped working after a bit past 70. And the last 10 years I've relaxed and enjoyed golfing, gardening and watching my grandchildren grow up and generally sort of growing old.
And now let's come back to Rear Admiral John Lord.
And then finally I got selected for command for HMAS Adelaide. And I guess that is the ultimate of your career. From the time you graduated from Naval College as a seaman officer, you wanted to have a command, so you finally get one. And that was when I was about 87, so 38 years of age.
Can you describe Adelaide for me?
Yeah, Adelaide it's now a dive wreck, a guided missile frigate, US, because by then we'd moved very heavily to US. They were frigates US made. We had 4 of them initially and then built up to 6. I went to Adelaide, based out of Sydney, and with a crew of about 180, 200 people, I suppose. I will be honest and say, and I said it at the time and I say it to everyone now, as I walked on board that ship in command, I felt totally comfortable. And the reason was I was fully qualified. Your whole naval career had led you to that moment, and it had done it so well that you felt confident, qualified, ready to go. And the real challenge you knew was to get your sailors as motivated as you were. That's what it was all about.
And did you achieve that?
I hope so. You'd have to ask the sailors. No, it was good. It was a very rewarding time. We did the 1988 bicentenary during that. But I guess the most exciting time was did a deployment out to the South Pacific, been out there about a month or two or whatever it was, and we pulled into Lautoka, and that was the time that Sitvani Rabuka decided to have the coup in Fiji. And we in Adelaide were alongside Lautoka. The government decided that we had to remain there, even though the Fiji government was saying you must leave, because I think we had about 3,500 Australian tourists across Fiji, and they wanted to fly them out first. So we stayed there against the Fiji government's wishes of the day and played a bit of politics and all those types of things, and then sailed at 3 a.m. in the morning, snuck out when all Australians had been evacuated. So that was very, very exciting. At times there, I was being directed by 13 different government agencies of what to do while I was alongside. And to give him his credit, Rear Admiral Peter Sinclair at the time, who was Fleet Commander, he phoned me up on day 2 and said, right, how's it going, John? What's the problems? And I said, well, there's a few problems, like 13 different departments in Canberra trying to tell me what to do. And he sorted that right out. And, that was Australia, I think, getting used to having to have a command and control line, political to military, right down to ship level, which we'd never really had to do that often as a country before.
Because what was your chain of command there?
That had to be the Maritime Commander, who was Peter Sinclair. And then he would go back into Canberra.
So, John, after you take that first confident step onto HMAS Adelaide, you go through a series of command positions. You ultimately retire from the Royal Australian Navy at the rank of Rear Admiral. Can you walk me through the growth of yourself as a commander from that first command of one ship to then task force and ultimately a fleet?
It's not a long tale, but it is one of, I guess, changing perspectives. You're right. The first command, I think, is probably the ultimate. You've been trained for it, you're confident, and it's very, very exciting. And you're leading a team of sailors, and that is just
it's the dream.
Ultimate. It is the dream. You've reached it. The next command I had was HMAS Hobart, which guided missile destroyer, slightly larger ship, larger ship's company. Greater responsibility there really comes from commanding other ships as well, and that's what you do when you become a captain in command. And that was very exciting, taking task groups over to work with the Americans on the west coast of the USA, running out of San Diego. But I guess the actual thrill of the command wasn't quite the same as that very first command. Throughout my career, from that first command up until leaving the Navy in the year 2000, at the age of 50, I had a mixture of shore and sea positions. I was the commander of flotillas as a Commodore that was going to sea with a team of about 50, training and working up other ships. That was very rewarding. But you work them up, you pump them out, they get on and do their job, and you move on to another ship. I guess for me, the second most challenging and most exciting position I had was Commander Northern Command, which was based in Darwin. Northern Command was formed as Australia's first high-tech joint headquarters. And my predecessor, who was an Air Force officer, Air Commodore, set it up. But he unfortunately left before he got to use it, and I was the first one to actually use it as a Naval Commodore. I was posted there as the first Naval Commodore. We were able to put all the high-tech electronics in there, and then we had Kangaroo 95, which was a major exercise across Northern Australia to test the concept of joint commands. Army, Navy and Air Force forces, some 18 to 20,000. 2,000 were from overseas and 18,000 Australians. A couple of brigades, plenty of Navy ships and aircraft. As a naval officer commanding that broad force, it was the first time they'd allowed a naval officer to do it. It was just so rewarding, and having the joint staff of Army, Navy and Air Force supporting you with the same enthusiasm to make sure that worked was just a great thrill to be part of that team, but also to see the three services come together, because we were just learning what we call joint warfare then. Now you see it every day, Afghanistan, Iraq, all over. Australia's very, very good at joint operations, but they were the real starting times, and it had great support from the then Chief of Defence Force and from the three services, and Australia's since gone on to develop that whole concept.
But it has to start somewhere.
Had to start somewhere, and it was there in that Kangaroo 95. Yeah, so I had the ultimate admiral's job, I suppose. I was Maritime Commander, as it was called then. It's now called Fleet Commander, based in Sydney, looking after the whole fleet, some 8,000 sailors and all the ships. And that was very rewarding, but for completely different reasons of your own individual command. That was rewarding in that you moved around a lot, talked to sailors, talked to young officers, talked to officers in command. You gave direction, you tried to meet their wants, and at the same time you were balancing the strategic directions of having ships in certain places, responding to cyclones, responding to different crises. The Timor crisis came up when I was Maritime Commander. It was rewarding to be part of the then joint headquarters, which was based in Sydney under an Air Force officer with the Navy and Army and Air Force Environment Commanders, me being the Naval Environment Commander. We had the real thrill of choosing Major General Peter Cosgrove to be the leader of the force going up to Timor, recommending to Canberra he should be the one, and the story moved on. Peter did a superb job up there commanding all the forces and really sorting out the Timor situation. So that was very exciting. I guess, though, at that time, politics and defence were trying to sort out the way they would go. And the minister at the time had a view, I guess, of the Defence Force and Navy that I didn't fully agree with. And I started to question whether I really wanted to stay around in the Navy. And I made a decision that I would leave. So at the age of 50, I had potential for another 5 or so years, perhaps go up and become Chief of Navy if I was lucky enough. But I just made a decision then that I did not really support the way that the Navy was being taken politically. So I thought it was time for me to make a move. No regrets, no real sour grapes. It was time to go and join the civilian life. And that was in 2000, and I'm still working in civilian life now, some 17 years later.
And what have you been doing in the commercial world?
Yeah, so I came down. I worked for the Victorian government for 2 or 3 years just to get my feet, and then was offered a position with P&O, the global P&O as it was then, based out of Pall Mall in UK. They had a company here in Australia, and I was offered a directorship there, which was basically travelling the world doing government business for P&O. Then the P&O got bought off the UK Stock Exchange by Dubai World, so I spent 12 to 18 months working with Dubai World. Once again, really exciting. A foreign company had taken over this huge empire that used to be P&O and pushed on. I became directors of companies, and then I became a chairman of several companies back in 2007 and 8, and that's where I sit today. I've had the thrill of joining a Chinese telecommunications company, Huawei, which has been thrilling in more ways than one, in that it has been quite controversial in Australia. We were kept out of the NBN, so we've also been a bit of a political football in a way. So as chairman, playing the politics at the same time as working with very many enthusiastic people as you do get in an ICT company, and growing that company in Australia has just been a fantastic experience. Completely different, but still thrilling. It still makes me get up every day excited.
Tell me about the dogs.
The dogs. Well, we have 2 dogs, German Shepherds, but no, the dogs that bring joy to my life is the Defence Bank Foundation dogs. Now, Defence Bank is a small bank in Australia, mainly on defence establishments. It has a foundation which gives its money into worthy causes. In setting up the foundation, which I'm lucky enough to be chairman of, we decided to choose an aspect of work that would support Defence Force people, but was quite unique. PTSD sufferers, as everyone knows, occur in not just Defence Force, emergency services as well, but Defence has had a real problem, particularly with recent conflicts. Very early on, there was a group found that providing dogs to PTSD sufferers helped these people recover, improve their lives, and the feedback was coming back rapidly like this. Defence Bank Foundation decided to get in and make this their major target of support. I think we've now put over 200 dogs with PTSD sufferers, ex-defence personnel around Australia. We bring the dogs in. It's a win-win-win. 3 wins in this. The dogs come from homes, strays. They're basically strays or from people trying to rehome dogs. They're not bred specifically for the task. So the dog is saved and given a real job. They're given at the moment to Bathurst Prison, and they're trained by prisoners. So the prisoners train the dogs up to this companion dog stage. And then once they're trained, a graduation occurs and they're handed over to a PTSD sufferer. So the win-win-win is 3 groups get involved in this fantastic training program. So as I said, we've got 200 dogs out there now. We're just about to double the program through the corrections, New South Wales corrections, and we hope to take it into Western Australia. We're not sure what the market is for the number of PTSD sufferers that will benefit from having these assistance dogs. But even yesterday, the Minister for Veterans Affairs, Mr. Tian, announced that they're going to have an investigation into the impact and how dogs can help PTSD sufferers. Now, this is fantastic for us. It will give us an idea of the number of people who need these dogs. We've got no idea at the moment.
I think it's a fantastic initiative.
So exciting.
Well, the military takes dogs to war, and I think it's a great idea to bring them and take them to peace.
Yeah. And the dogs that perhaps don't have a future in our society also get a future.
And it's something constructive for inmates to...
It is. It's a joke. As I said, it's a win-win-win.
In our next and final episode of this mini-series, we will hear closing thoughts and reflections from all 9 veterans. Never miss an episode. www.lifeonthelinepodcast.com and join the conversation on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Life on the Line Podcast and on Twitter at LOTL Pod. Life on the Line is brought to you by Thistle Productions. Artwork by Big Cat Design, music by Dan Van Werkhoven. Thanks for listening, and lest we forget.